Well, StreamYard, that was a weirdly long delay between when I clicked the thing and then we're here sitting here live looking all awkward, whatever, and then the animation runs. Beautiful. It ran like seconds after I clicked it, so it's just, you know.
Yeah, we have there's a delay there, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Not a delay in our joy though, excitement.
Yeah, which is gonna, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna post a clip of our sitting there awkwardly waiting for the animation to run. I love that. This happened to my colleague yesterday, by the way, on StreamYard too, which is like, I think this must have been similar kind of thing because he's sitting there, he's like standing waiting for this animation to run, and nothing. And I'm like sitting there typing in the background, like, "You're live."
These work. It's always that, or like the awkward ending of calls. I'm now a Google Meet company instead of a Zoom company. I never thought I'd miss Zoom. I miss Zoom.
Oh, really? I mean, yeah. I think Google Meets is
There's
fine.
certain features that you don't realize that are like that important, like reacting to a message in the chat. Can't do that. Replying in a thread to a message in the chat. Can't do that. Like when you screen share, it's a lot more finicky.
Yes.
Things you didn't realize.
Like looking at the wrong account, Nick. I knew he was going to do that. All right. So nice to see everybody in the chat. So, okay, for those of you who don't know us already and don't know this show, DevRelish is all about all things DevRel, and DevRel, the issues, the rest of, there's all this. DevRel is like not just developer advocate, developer evangelist, whatever your title is. It can be like community manager. It can be like, I've had a bunch of content, developer content manager, all these things that fall into the ish part of DevRel. So they're DevRel roles, but they're not necessarily a developer advocate. Anyway, that's my long-winded explanation. My name is Bryan Rinaldi. I lead developer relations at LocalStack. And my partner here is...
Yeah, Erin McHale-Staples, and I am a senior developer experience engineer at Galileo. So
we are... the Bryans are taking over today, although some of us spell our names correctly. We are bringing our... I
like to think that this is not a Bryan taking over, but a recovery meeting of former colleagues of Erin.
Yes, this is true. We are all former colleagues,
especially all named Bryan. It's amazing.
Yes, I have a track record. Former colleagues named Erin, former colleagues named Erin. I did start a cult once at a company. I don't know if you remember that, Bryan. Or was that past when you left Launch Darkly? I did start a cult at Launch Darkly.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, no, then I
wasn't there. Because you weren't invited. Sorry, it was the Aarons, and Aarons cult. Okay.
Okay. All right. I'm glad I missed it. Yeah. So yes, both Bryan and I worked with Erin. We are both still somewhat in recovery. Bryan's had a little bit longer time to recover.
Yep.
Which is why he looks healthier and younger. It's not because he's actually younger. It's like, we're the same age. Just Erin aged me more.
Hold on. Like, Bryan called himself old, and I was like, a couple weeks ago, he was like in Discord, was like, I'm so old, blah, blah, blah. I'm like basically middle-aged. And I was like, no, because I'm not that much younger than you. And
I didn't say old, I said middle-aged, and I am middle-aged. I'm 40. That counts.
As someone in their 30s, I don't appreciate this. That's too close to my age.
Yeah, get used to it. You'll get there eventually.
All right. So, we actually invited Bryan here for more than just complaining about our past histories working with Erin. Bryan has been in DevRel for a while, actually. So, Bryan, which was your first job? Was it was Orbit your first DevRel job, or
no? Sanity.io was my first, my first official DevRel job. I was doing developer content creation for a couple years before that.
Oh, nice. Okay, so yeah, actually, why don't you give people a bit of your background? That's
sure. So web designer and developer for almost 20 years now, about 19 years. Community organizer for 14 years. I started a meetup group in Memphis, Tennessee, started a hackathon in Memphis. And then for about the past 5 or 6 years, I've been doing professional DevRel. So Sanity.io, Algolia, Orbit.love, and then most recently HighGraph up until this past December. So been doing it kind of across the board in a few different companies, published on CSS Tricks, Smashing Mag, YouTube, all over the place. Just whatever we can do DevRel-ish, as it were. That's what I like to do.
Nice. So yeah, I remember, I think you and I, we might have been first introduced when you were at Orbit, or was it when you were at Sandy? Or maybe both. I don't know.
You know, I want to say it was before. It was before I was at Sanity. I was running a podcast called That's My Jamstack.
Yes,
and you were a guest on it.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
I was going to say it's Robinson's problem that I got introduced to Rinaldi. So.
Oh, is that right?
It was, yeah, because I did not know you before,
You're
Brian.
You're to blame for all of this, Brian.
I was, and because technically Orbit was my first DevRel job. I came from the community product-y side, chaotic UX side, media side. I don't know.
People person, just making connections left and right. Even though Erin's constantly connecting me to people, so it doesn't count as much anymore.
So
I don't know.
DevRelish wouldn't even exist without you, Brian. Is what somehow this all. So it's like you know, it's like you're like Kevin Bacon in the DevRel community or something.
I'll take it, I guess.
Yeah, was it like, remember the 7? What was it?
How many? 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Yeah,
6 degrees.
I just saw an interview with him. He did the Last Meals podcast, and he like they asked him about like how did you feel about that, and he was like, as a young actor, I hated it. It's like I thought that everyone was saying I was a terrible actor. He's like, now as like an old dude, like it's great, it's awesome.
Yes, Kevin Bacon. All right, so all right. We wanted to chat with you today because you actually gave us, speaking of Jamstack, well, we can actually, maybe we don't speak of Jamstack. We don't want to speak ill of the dead.
Pour one out.
Whoops. Yes, pour one out for Jamstack. But you actually spoke at the event, the jam.dev, and one of your talk was all about like power of play as a developer. So I want you to kind of have it. Tell us a little bit more about that for anybody who might have been unfortunate enough to have missed your session.
Sure. So I mean, that presentation was all about the fact that, you know, all the influencers out there, they're going to tell you to learn how to do development so you can make your $1 million, so that you can go out there, land a job at a FANG company. But really what it amounts to, when you have these powers of a developer, you can improve your life, improve the lives around you, and also play with that code. So, you know, I showcased some stuff around how you can make the internet better for you. We talked about enshittification of various things. And then we also talked about like, it all started this whole kind of concept of the power of being a developer when I built a site to scrape my father's untapped beers out of Untapped into a database, into a Sanity database, and then remix the front end so I could do better search for him, showcase some cool information. And I did it all because it's fun. Like the act of creation is a type of play. And so that was more about like, what's the power of being a developer? But my new history, right? My nouveau history, since leaving HighGraph has been exploring the research around the concept of play, because there's a ton of research out there. And trying to see how we can make better connections in the world via play. And as it turns out, a lot of these concepts, not just like kind of help DevRel, but like basically what we do as developer relations, developer advocates, is a whole bunch of different play activities. And so we can kind of dive deeper, but I've got all sorts of things we can talk about. I think if you don't mind, we could probably start by defining our terms, because if you've ever seen me present at various different places, I'm a Wittgensteinian philosopher, which means that I believe that we can't have a meaningful conversation without first defining the terms that we use. So would you mind me going through a whole bunch of information about play?
I would feel disappointed to have a Brian
yes.
talk and not a definition. So
Exactly, right?
like,
Like, I mean,
I
we
don't
knew
really
what we were getting
know.
ourselves into.
Yeah, like we fully committed to this sign up.
I was gonna say the two of you absolutely know me. So yeah, so when I talk about play, right, and this is something that I kind of do in a lot of ways. I talk about capital D design. I talk about capital C community versus lowercase c community. What I refer to as play in this moment is going to be capital P play, which means it's not sitting down and playing a game, right? Although that certainly is. Like, that's a subset of what we're talking about. I'm a board gamer. I'm a video gamer. I play tabletop RPGs. I love that aspect of play, but play is a much broader thing. And I want you to know that just about everything I talked about today is actually encapsulated really, really well in a book by a guy named Stuart Brown. He's been studying play for decades. He's actually retired now, but he started studying play in like the 80s, I think. And so it's a book that has a whole bunch of stuff that he's kind of found useful. I actually grabbed the link and pasted it over in the chat too. But what it amounts to is the fact that play is not just a concept that we have as humans. Play is actually a biological imperative that we see across the animal kingdom. A lot of the research has been done in mammals, but we see it in birds, we see it in some higher function lizards. But it's basically, it's a biological imperative. And the reason that we know this is that animals engage in play activities, right? Who hasn't gone down kind of the rabbit hole of watching tiger cubs or bear cubs
or
wrestle,
penguins
right?
pushing each other in the bush.
Yeah, in water.
The opportunity, they're a lot more aggressive.
There's actually ravens in snowy weather will sled down a hill and then fly back to the top of it and sled down again. So it's like this thing that like the animal kingdom plays, but it's not just like the cubs, right? It's not just, we can say that, oh, play is an instinctual thing because we have to learn how to hunt. We have to learn how to do these things. But animals play into adulthood too. There's actually a cool story about a really rough winter in the Canadian like Arctic area, right? And the polar bears were all hungry. They were all like, they hadn't been able to get seals for a while, and there was a Canadian dog sled team up there, and they'd camped out, and from across kind of the tundra, right, a polar bear came loping forward, and there was one of the dogs kind of just hanging out, and the dog sled owner's like, oh, well, that dog's dead, right? That dog's not coming back. But the dog got down and like bent forward and did kind of what they call a play bow, and the polar bear and the dog played. They wrestled around. The bear never did anything to hurt the dog. The dog didn't hurt the bear. The polar bear ran off, and the next day at the same time came back, played with the dog, and happened for a whole week until the thaw occurred and the polar bear could get across and go eat seals. And so what turned out, the fact that the polar bear could have eaten the dog, right, could have taken a survival instinct, eaten the dog, and been fine. The play instinct overrode it, right? So play is instinctually bound into especially mammalian animals, but animals in general. And that's got to be special because play activities are not good at survival, right? So not only is it that this polar bear wasn't eating the dog to survive, but many animals that play forget their surroundings while they play. So they're easier to be eaten, yet they still play. So somehow these creatures, these animals, continue to survive, propagate, evolve while doing things that should kill them, right? So it must be this really strong evolutionary play to get us there, to get us to the point where they're actually able to continue. And there's been research. The research shows that there's a lot like mammals with higher order brains, with bigger brains, engage in more play activity, but also they get a more well-developed frontal cortex, which helps you see what's good or bad information and discard bad information quickly. So again, like there's actual like evolutionary imperative there. But what really happens is unknown in some ways, right? It's the fact that like humans have these brains that make all these connections means that we actually engage and play much longer. But we also see that I gotta look at the word real fast. It's a neuroscience word. I can't find it. My handwriting's terrible. But basically, it's neuro. Anyway, the chemicals in your brain that help foster neuron connection, to help foster the actual growth of neurons. The act of play helps foster that. It gives those chemicals, it pushes them out. And so we actually find that humans can get the benefits of it later and later in life. And there's a reason that we as a species evolved to not give up play. So even though animals like polar bears, wolves will play occasionally, they don't play nearly as much as what humans typically do. And that's because we actually, our brains continue to grow, our connections in our brains continue to grow. And when we lack play, we stop building those connections. And so it's actually of a detriment to our neurological health, to our mental health, and to our actual ability to do all the things that we do by not playing. So first and foremost, it's a biological imperative.
Is that like, because like you always had like, I don't know, like remember like the Nintendo DS where they had those brain fit games or whatever? Like I've like do remember it being like a thing for memory retention is like you'd always have to like, I don't remember the different games or whatever, but like for the memory retention.
All of those games, and like there was something else too. There, I remember the commercials. Like it was long enough ago that they were like cable commercials, and like I was still watching cable. Like who does that now? But it was all about like neuroplasticity. That was the word that they used probably in the early 2000s. I think was neuroplasticity, and the ability for your brain to change. Right, the ability for you to continue growing.
So basically, old dogs can learn new tricks.
Old dogs can, and another interesting thing as a quick aside, we actually bred and domesticated dogs in a way to extend their play activities further than adolescence. So wolves lose a bunch of their play instinct, right? They get rid of a lot of it, except for when they're raising pups, right? Like that comes back and they have to teach in that way, and the play instinct comes back. But we selected wolves that later in their adolescence and later into their adulthood kept the play instinct longer, because we as humans socially play, and that's what we wanted to see. So a Labrador was selectively bred all the way down to retain puppy instincts longer, because that was what was pleasing to humans, because we love to play. So yeah.
So okay, I do love all that research. By the way, your book, I think YouTube has this thing; it doesn't let you paste links if you're not.
That,
so send it in the private chat, and I'll paste it.
Love technology.
That way, yeah. You can't unless you're the moderator or something. I don't know.
It makes sense.
I don't know the rules. But okay. So yeah, I love all this stuff, but I do want to actually get, because I mean I haven't actually worked with any wolves or polar bears yet. I mean,
so
maybe once play. AI, let's talk about human play, and I want to particularly I think, because I thought your point of how this gets at being what you do as a developer, number one.
Yep.
I think it's even more like that's amplified in DevRel because of the nature of the stuff we're building.
Yep. So give me 5 more minutes, Brian. I
minutes.
Promise we'll get to developer stuff. I promise.
There's hard time limits. We run a tight ship here.
Absolutely. It's like hitting every mark. I know.
We're always on schedule, never behind, always planning this weeks up ahead, calendars, all of it.
I sent you my outline like 2 weeks ago, right? And it showed you exactly what I want to talk about. I didn't just write it on a legal pad this morning. Absolutely not. But yeah, so I think there's a little bit more groundwork, right? So that's like, it's a biological imperative. We all need this, right? But what actually is a play activity? I said it's not just playing a game, right? So it's got to be more than that. And so in this book that Brian just linked in the chat, Stuart Brown, again, a play psychologist for decades and decades, and just a regular psychologist before that, he outlined some characteristics of play. And so I think that's kind of important to go through, as well as there's kind of a process that people go through in the acts of play. And by understanding both of those things, we understand them as a framework then to apply to what we do. So the important thing is play is really hard to define because everyone's different, right? So again, I play board games. I love board games, but that's not the only way of doing it. And they're drastically different. So when we look at it, we more look at criteria. And it's the same way as like trying to define art. I have a book actually over here called The Transfiguration of the Commonplace. And it's all about defining art. Like it's a whole thing. Again, I have a degree in philosophy, so these are the things that I studied. But they actually are very similar in the beginning of that book and the beginning of play, in that neither one actually wants to define it. Both say, I shouldn't be defining it. It's this amorphous thing. It should be amorphous. However, I understand that I have to have some sort of framework to discuss it. So there are some criteria, and I really like the way that Stuart Brown has done it. I've read some other stuff that are slightly different, but I think Stuart Brown's is the best. And the very first criteria is, I think, the most interesting, but there's a lot of other good stuff. And it is that it is apparently purposeless, right? So to engage in an actual play activity, we have to go into it without an ulterior motive, right? We have to say, I'm not doing this to make a buck. I'm not doing this for survival. I'm doing this just because I want to. So it seems purposeless, even though we know it's got all sorts of purpose. Play has purpose. So that's kind of the number one thing. It seems purposeless. And then it's also got to be somewhat inherently attractive. It has to be something that I look at and I say, yeah, I want to do that. That looks like it might be fun. It has to give a sense of freedom from time, which is what we'd say in like tech land is flow state, right? I get into flow state, I forget time, an hour slips away, and oh my goodness, I thought I was only working 10 minutes. So like it gives you this kind of freedom from time. It gives you a diminished consciousness of self, which is kind of a broader thing, probably not super into what we have to talk about today, but it is there. It has what we call improvisational potential, which means I can take what happens and I can end on top of it, right? I can do something else with it. And then there has to be a continuation desire. I have to either say, I don't want this to stop, or when it does stop, I have to say, yeah, I want to do that again. So there has to be this kind of desire for it to continue. And in fact, that's why children struggle so much, right? Children struggle because they don't have a framework to say, I know I'll get back to it. They're having so much fun. You tell them to stop and it's a meltdown because they don't understand that, yeah, we can do this again tomorrow. Like we can do it again in 30 minutes, but we have to stop for now. So that is the play instinct just at its most raw form, is the kind of, but we'll never be able to do it again. So that's kind of like, that is, if you look at an activity and it fits most of those criteria, it is probably a play activity. But as you go through a play activity, there's some stages that we kind of go through, and not every play activity is going to hit all these stages, but most do. And I think this is also where we start getting really interesting when it comes to how this works in a developer advocacy kind of role. And this is actually from a guy named Scott Eberly, who is the vice president of the Strong Museum in Rochester, New York, which is the Museum of Play. It's the American Museum of Play. It's on my bucket list. I'm hopefully going there sometime in the near future. Who knew it's a giant place? It's amazing. Well, I assume it's amazing. I've seen YouTube videos. But he says that most time when you're going through a play activity, and this is where we get, I think, really into a lot of the meat of what we can talk about today, you go through these steps in kind of this order, with one leading to the next. And the first, he says, is that there's a sense of anticipation. So let's say you're really into the concept of play and you really are looking forward to talking about how it applies to DevRel. And you say, hey, Brian and Erin, let's talk about it on DevRel. And then you look forward to it, right? You feel, and it's not perfect, right? Like you've got maybe some stress or some anxiety around it, because play is also like an inherently slightly dangerous thing. And it gives us that kind of sense of like, what will happen? Will Brian and Erin hate me forever when I go on here and talk about it? Will chat be completely bored by my non sequiturs about polar bears playing with dogs? I don't know. But I do have a sense of anticipation. I'm looking forward to this. And then that leads to a sense of surprise, right? So surprise is kind of the next step. You come and, I don't even know what the surprise would be in this case, but like some sort of like little like, ooh, I learned something new. Ooh, I didn't think about it in that way. Ooh, we had a whole conversation about us working with Erin, and I didn't really anticipate that being a 2-minute a 2-minute aside in the beginning. So we get these kind of like fun little things, and those are little surprises that give us a little sense of pleasure, which is the next step. We want a pleasurable activity. Those surprises usually lead to it. New connections, new bits of information coming in. We're surprised, and it releases a little endorphin or a little dopamine in the brain. And we get a little rush of pleasure, which again makes us want to have that continuation going on, right? And then that pleasure hopefully leads to a better understanding of the world around us. I learned these things, they got cemented in my brain via a little hit of dopamine, and now I understand the world better in some way. Whether that is everyone's completely bored about me talking about play, or everyone is enamored by it. Either way, I've learned something and I can kind of move on. And that gives me a deeper sense of strength, which is kind of the next little step, which brings me to poise. I'm now a little bit more balanced in my life, and I'm ready for the next anticipation, the next anxiety, and the next little surprise that gets me into the play cycle all over again. So I think that cycle is a really interesting framework to think about DevRel in as well. I'm gonna have a sip.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think DevRel, like the one thing I love about DevRel is that we not exactly driven by like the same things that you get in a traditional developer job, where like, hey, the work gets handed down to you, you build. And I do think your talk was more like that traditional developer job where you do have to kind of break that monotony of just kind of doing, I pick up a ticket, I code that thing, I push that ticket out to production, I go pick up another ticket kind of thing, and you experiment and you learn not just new skills, but you kind of bring back that joy for what you do.
Yep.
By just playing with code, right? But I think we at DevRel kind of get the luxury sometimes of doing that, and I think when done right, DevRel can be very playful, right? Because like some, one the best demos and the best talks I ever had were like teaching things that like I always tell my team, I'm like, you can teach it without being boring, right? Like you can teach it in a playful manner, or you kind of help people to learn by like it doesn't matter if the demo is pointless in terms of like I built something that is realistically useless, but it taught the concepts that I need you to learn, and it made it more engaging.
And I think I'm gonna use a term I hate, right? I abhor this term. I've had to deal with it in the past. This is a framework towards virality, is what it is. Play in itself will help whatever you're doing in DevRel reach towards virality, right? So if you're teaching a new feature coming out, right? And you need to write something or record something. If you look at it from the sense that when you share the social media post, that social media post should give people an anticipation, right? That first stage of play. They should say, oh, no, I kind of want to learn more about that. I've never thought about that, right? And then they get in, and then you twist it a little bit, right? You give them a little sense of surprise. You give them that information. They're able to learn something new, and they're learning something new that releases the endorphins, that releases the dopamine, and then like you give them this understanding. So if we anticipate all of this through, or if we look at all this that lens, right? Every piece of content you create, everything you do in your community, everything you do should try to hit these stages along the way. Should try to connect people in a deeper way in this sense, because that's how. If I go through this process with your piece of content, I will want to share that with others, because I want to give others the same pleasure that I just got, and by doing so, I create a bond with them. That's really in essence the virality of it. If I had this experience that is a play experience with your organization, I'm going to want to share it.
Yeah, for sure. Erin, I know you've been messing with this stuff.
I mean, I think the parallel, to draw on another non sequitur here and go on another tangent, is definitely the one of the things that I think about is how do we like relate to one another, right? Like the core of comedy and the way that they teach you in comedy is you want to come out strong, but if you come out, your opening joke is too strong, you could off-put the audience. So if you're going to take a risk, maybe something new material, whether it might be controversial, you want it at the 1/3 mark or the 2/3 mark at your show. Because statistically, they're already bought in, they already know you, they already have some kind of relationship with you. Also, your opening, you always want to be friendly or come across. And unfortunately, there's some gender bias behind that. Like I get a lot of feedback of you come across too strong, and it's like, okay, well, and a dude, you'd be excited about that.
Yeah.
But I kind of think the same thing for dev relations, right? Like, I think the question we get most is like, do I have to be a software developer to be in this job in this chat? Like, honestly, kind of shocked we haven't gotten it yet, but today, but there's still time. I think on that note, people want to know that they can see themselves using this technology too, right? Like if your DevRel's job is to make people feel like they can be embraced in that technology, how do you make them, the individual, see like, oh yes, me too, I could do that. That's so easy.
Yep.
Duh.
Well, I think like the idea of live coding is a really interesting idea in the space, and live coding is never going to be the thing that moves the metrics, right? It's not that. However, when it comes to that idea of that connection and that play space, why the hell does anyone want to watch somebody live code? But when we talk about that and we watch the fact that people want to watch people let's play, right? Like they want to go in and watch somebody play a video game on Twitch. It's the same thing. But here's the thing, right? I didn't cover the archetypes of player style, but one of them is the idea of the artist/creative. So while playing a video game is a play activity, right? Whether you're going for the story or going for the action or whatever it is, that's an obvious play activity. The act of writing code is a play activity. So what live coding allows somebody to do is the same thing as like sitting down next to your older brother and like watching him play through an SNES game back in the day. It's the same as watching somebody do a let's play on Twitch, which is the same as watching somebody live code. And you get this sense of, I can do this too. Like I watch people play various games and I get that sense and I know that I can't play at their level, right? I enjoy playing games. I'm not a competitor. I don't care. And therefore I will never be at their level and it will never be like that when I do it. But I get to feel that connection. I get to feel that idea that we are the same. Yeah. Like if I played this game, yeah, that's totally going to happen. And then we get to kind of have our own little moments in that. But that's the same with live coding. And I think that that's one of the reasons that live coding can be very, very beneficial. It gives this sense of, yes, I can do that. It gives this sense of, yes, I can play with that. Because a lot of the time the live coding is like, oh, I broke it, right? Like, oh, I was doing it. I expected it to be really easy. This feature did this in this weird way I wasn't expecting. Here's how I fix it. And so you're giving people more permission at that point to experiment. And the experimentation is the play activity there. Yeah, like I think that kind of goes in with almost anything that we do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best live coding, I when I've talked to people that love to watch live coding, they love the people who just experiment and make mistakes, and don't come in with like, oh, hey, I've already pre-planned this out and it's gonna go. I know exactly it's gonna go smoothly. It's just like
So
they're
frustrating. Like
yeah.
I hate that. I literally hate that. As someone who watched a lot of live coding when I was learning and loves learning through YouTube, I even don't care if you Google something on a YouTube video. Because I want to know if I Google something, I'm not going to be like, oh, Erin's so dumb. She doesn't figure that out. No, like we all Google.
Yep. That's what it's there
Do
for.
we still Google?
Yes.
I thought we
do
all
not
just
use ChatGPT. Bad, Brian. No. Bad. Google.
I Google all my information from ChatGPT. This is why I know.
Go watch
I know
the
lots of false
Jam.dev
things.
presentation and see how you can go and disable the AI summary for your Google search results, because that's even better.
Yes, you did actually mention that. Yeah.
I may have strong opinions there. Maybe.
Couldn't tell. Couldn't tell.
Yes, Charles, using Gemini counts.
Here's the thing. I say this, I fully understand that my paycheck is paid for by AI. So I say that with a caveat. Use a lot of dumb things with it though. Can't say I don't use ChatGPT. Use that too. I also use some Olama is probably my most used one for the offline. vibes. And I usually am pulling custom models off of Hugging Face. So, however, the thing that I'm starting to see in the content world, or the world of like content, is I can tell who didn't use Google when they're writing, because it's the same 5 terms and the same 3 blog posts listed. And it's like, are you an expert, or did you just like put in like, I'm going to write a blog post about play and developer relations, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you didn't like, the ideas don't come from the whatever, the automations. The ideas, like that's the secret sauce. Like, why would you give that out? Like, fine, whatever. Correct my text with Grammarly and cursor. Thank you so much, because I hate TypeScript and type errors are hard in my little brain. And so I have leveled up my development skills from using the little ignoring my errors. And instead I actually just make the robots fix them. And then I tell them to teach me how they fix them. But
and introduce new errors. That's beside the point.
Yeah, I mean, fair.
Yeah. Introducing new errors is Erin's job, not the AI.
That's actually like, that's me in a nutshell. Yes.
Well, and in fairness, right, I always say part of DevRel is being the first ones to break stuff. Super important. Break it before our customers break it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the AI stuff is interesting in how it plays into like this, because I do think part of play is about creativity, right? And I was at part of a panel last week where I was kind of the only one arguing that, while I do use AI stuff, I have like kind of buckets of where I feel it fits and where I feel it doesn't fit. But I said, you have to just like, there's a part of understanding with AI that like, it's not creative. It mimics creativity, because some forms of creativity are about bringing things together. Oh, lost Erin.
Bye, Erin.
Bye, Erin. Goodbye. We'll continue on without her. I'm sure she'll be back.
Yep.
There she is. Did you just remove yourself from the stage, Erin?
I was like, I'm done with this talk. No, just kidding. I was trying to copy a link into the chat, and I copied it to the URL bar.
Oh,
we've all been there.
And you can't, put it in the private chat, because I don't think you can post there either. Anyway, so I was having this conversation about AI and creativity, and I was just like, you have to understand, it's not really, like I said, it's best that what it does best is basically creating complicated mashups, right? Like real creativity isn't just synthesizing what came before, and it's like you take that and you create something entirely new that isn't just the mix of the two things. It's different in different ways. That's real creativity. Like, and all it can do is mash stuff up, because it's not creative. It doesn't know anything, has no understanding. I mean, like the best creativity comes even in play, right? Like, you have to understand what you're doing. Like, part of that is gaining an understanding of everything you're doing, right? And you have to actually know. You don't have, it's not, at a certain point, the better you get at knowing something, the better you're going to get at playing that thing, right? But that AI doesn't know anything. It knows all it is a predictive text or whatever, pattern recognition. Yeah, it doesn't understand what it says. It says, like, it's just, hey, I put this sequence of words, and the next word that's most likely based on a bunch of algorithms and complicated stuff is this word. It doesn't even understand what it's telling you. Though it is very complimentary. It does actually constantly tell me what a great job I'm doing. That was a brilliant insight, Brian. Let me go ahead and use that insight to make this better. So it makes me feel good.
Okay, I'm going to push here on this. Actually, and this is also practicing for future talks. So I do think, like, again, pattern recognition is great, and like using it in those terms are great. I'm like, this AI craze isn't going anywhere. We're still going to be using it. It's here. Like, I think we just like, and I'm not saying there's good or bad here, but I do think the risk comes when we are using AI without subject matter experts. And that is very different. So there's people who are using AI apps in production today. I will not claim if that's a smart or not smart thing because that's out of the realm of this conversation. But one thing we do see is like when we are just using the off-the-shelf model and hooking it up to an API and not thinking about the consequences, both for us as the user of that model or the model's API, but also the consumer who is consuming that end app. And is that really safe, ethical, concerning? Like, is that the right information? What are the inputs happening? What are the outputs happening? So like having your own, either it's a fine tune or having some sort of like human in the loop type situation is really the direction we need to go in for this type of stuff. And the only way you get that beautiful, beautiful human in the loop scenarios and figuring out what works out is, guess what? It's going to be playing with it.
So I'll double challenge, right? We'll go double challenge.
Is it like the double dog challenge?
Yeah, and we'll bring it
Triple
bring
dog?
it back towards play, right? Like I feel like we're all very passionate about this, so we could go off in this direction forever. However, I don't know if I've talked about this out my mouth at all. I've written about this a little bit, but there's neurological issues with over-reliance on tools, and there's trade-offs. And I will never say absolutely that it's a bad, I'm gonna say it's a bad trade-off for me. So the trade-off in using these tools, right, is that we literally will lose the connections in our brain that govern how we do these things. So literally, if you're using it like Brian in the way that you were kind of referencing it as this creative engine, even though it's not that, even though it can't be that, you are giving away that element of how the human brain functions for creativity. You're giving away that place sense. And we don't have a lot of studies on that yet, but we do have studies on what's called the Google effect. And they were done in the 2010s. And it was all about the idea that when we basically outsource our memory retention to an external source, we are less able to access the memory that we have. Our memory retention, our memory access is worsened when we know we can find the information and when we know where to find the information, which is a weird thing. Like we knew back in the day that we could find the information in the encyclopedia but like it was not a fast thing. And in fact, the faster you were able to retrieve the data from an area, wherever that was, the more trustworthy you found the data that you got, which is all sorts concerning in all sorts of ways when it comes to AI. But the idea, right, is that if you don't use it, you lose it. It's that sort of idea. But neurologically speaking, we lost some of our memory retention and access by outsourcing it to search engines. Now, what did we gain in that? We gained almost limitless access to all sorts of information that we didn't have access to before. So maybe that trade-off was a good one. However, what are we gaining from, and I'm gonna use AI in this term to mean Gen AI, right? Mm-hmm. Plenty of large language model stuff that I think there's probably some great use for, right? But Gen AI and outsourcing our creativity means that we lose aspects of our creativity and we don't gain a whole lot. We maybe gain some efficiency, but then if we have to have a human in between to figure it out, right, then we're not really gaining efficiency. And then we get into the socioeconomical issues of the fact that if we replace everyone, they're not going to be paying, universal basic income. So we're not going to be like, you can't run people out of jobs.
You're ruining my punchlines here, Brian. The whole point is if we get AI to do our job, we can all go to the beach.
That's absolutely how it should work, but we all know that's not
it's idealistic world.
There'll be more beach because there'll be less ocean. Isn't that how it works?
This is now the dystopic edition.
Yep.
Yeah, and AI, of course, we learned today can replace anybody but VCs because VCs are just so specialized and so unique.
There's that little je ne sais quoi they have that helps them find the next big thing. It's all instinct for them.
Yeah. But well, and this podcast is, or whatever you want to call it, is we don't have any sponsors, so now we can piss off any. We can start talking.
And you know what? I'm unemployed. VCs. Like there's no one I can piss off. It's great.
Oh, yeah. Well, except that you
like kind of piss off nobody over here. I don't care about tech anymore. Let's go.
I think the thing is, like, no matter, tools are always going to be tools, right? Like, and I think, again, I think there was something when Brian and I worked together, it was a lot of like, all tools are shit. I think that was a common phrase that would be yelled out.
I just, I'm sorry, I'm laughing out loud because I'm like thinking, because I was like thinking about Mark Andreessen. You're like, tools are going to be tools. I'm like, exactly.
Indeed.
Okay.
I saw you laugh at that and I thought, heck yeah. Yep.
Oh man, I missed that. I like that. There was two on the nose. Appreciate it. But I think like it's also, we forget about the whole part. One of the most important parts, whether it's in AI or not, is context. Like, where are you getting your information from? How are you searching this information? Yep. Who wrote the information? What time period was written? Who's going to check on that study? Or who has $1 in the game? Like,
yep. Who has $1 in the game? Big question. Always a big question.
Big question in a capitalist-facing society. And I think that's part of the question that in this whole creativity world, there's something, Jeff Harry, who's someone that like I know through a previous job way long ago, is very much like there is scientific studies of just the art of like slowing down and completely doing something different.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting how, this is kind of unrelated, but how you cannot have a talk, a podcast, whatever you want in tech right now without it eventually becoming dystopian.
Yeah, we cannot have blank because dystopia. I don't even think I don't even think it's tech related. Okay, like I was playing Civ 7 last night. And you know what you do? You just blow up things.
That's how you win.
Yeah. Actually, I wanted an economic victory this time. Trades are really hot. Okay.
Civ has been trying for the longest time to make it so that people wouldn't just blow stuff up, and yet they still really haven't gotten there.
Yeah. I haven't played that in a long time, but I mean, it always was like, well, do I want to win or do I want to challenge myself? If I want to challenge myself, I go for the economic victory. Yep. If I want to win and I want to win easily, I just take over the world.
All right, so back into play real fast, since I know we're running low on time. I want to mention some other things to think about when you're thinking about your DevRel program and the ideas around play. And that's kind of play is nothing without the human, right? We'll ignore the fact that AI can play, right? We'll ignore that. But looking at the human aspect of it, we don't all play the same either. Just in the same way we have to define it by these kind of categorizations, we have to think about the type of people who play as well. And so this guy, Stuart Brown, right? He went and he conducted thousands and thousands of what he called play interviews. And through that, he started putting together what he calls the archetypes of play, of the players. And I think that there's actually a decent bit of you'll be able to kind of see yourself in it a little bit. And we all as adults find a few that we're drawn towards. And as a kid, it could be any of them, right? You're drawn towards all of them because play is that's your job. You have to play. But I really like the way he broke down the play archetypes. And I think that they also kind of fit in with the types of emotions and feelings that we try to convey in the DevRel world. And so there are, 8. And so the first one is the idea of the Joker. And the Joker is the class clown. It's the one that always wants to have the next joke. It's the one that's looking for the comedy, is looking for that part of. So when you're doing a stream or when you're doing a video, that little joke or that first joke that you put in your presentation. Yeah, down here. I know.
Yeah. Accurate.
But it's not just the person that's doing it, it's also the person that appreciates it too. So that first joke that you put in your presentation, get your first laugh to give you confidence, right? Because that's the whole thing in DevRel. That's also connecting with the Joker in the audience, right? Whoever that is. Then there's one that we probably don't hit a lot of, which maybe we can, I don't know, which is the kinesthete, which is the movement-based person, the person that does things for the joy of moving their body. So he also has examples in the book, which again, it kind of hits this lovely mesh with the transfiguration of the commonplace, talking about art, where running can be a play activity, but isn't always a play activity, right? So the person that runs for the joy of running, that's a play activity. The person who runs for the social aspect of hanging out with their run club. Yeah, no, not me too, Erin. I don't.
That hurt. My joints hurt doing that
But
already.
the person that runs to like beat all the other runners or beat their personal best or runs specifically just to get in shape and hates every second of it, these are not play activities. So there's kind of like a difference there. But the kinesthete, almost all kids are kinesthetes, right? They all, if you ever just see a playground full of kids, you have no clue what's happening out there, and they're all just moving their bodies. And that's just for the joy of running, the joy of jumping, the joy of testing their body. So I think I don't know how we make that happen, but it's also like you see, DevRels that give presentations and they're like, let's do our morning stretch at the beginning, right? And like part of that is to activate the play instinct. We most easily activate the play instinct through movement. And so like when you look at preschool teachers and they'll do like songs with their fingers and the kids will move their fingers along, it activates the play centers in the brain.
So throwing socks out, because like I throw like both Monstrosity and Galileo give out socks. And so at the beginning of my talk, if you answered a question, I will definitely beam you in the face. I mean, kindly toss a pair of socks in your direction. Yeah. But I do find it makes your talk better because people are like, they will wake up if you start them off by throwing stuff at them.
Swag always, and then swag to the face. That's where it's at.
Extra level.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, like just the active movement gets people more engaged. The active movement. So yeah, I think in like live stuff, like getting people moving activates that center, which helps a lot. Then there's kind of the idea of the explorer, which is the person that really wants to like find new concepts. Like so in DevRel, we're talking about like what can you show not only about your product, but about like the JavaScript ecosystem. What tidbit can you give them that completes their knowledge of the world? So like the explorer is the person that's always it might be the person that's always looking for the next trip, but could also be the person that's looking for the next bit of information. Then you got the competitors. So competitors are like their sense of play is to be number one. They're looking to beat the others. And so competitive hackathons, as like I hate competitive hackathons. The hackathon I ran, it was a community hackathon. We were there to hang out together and to make cool stuff together. And that was it. We gave prizes, but they were random. You couldn't earn them. So it was like, there was no competition there, but the competitor is seeking that. And yeah, totally, Erin. I know that you would be.
What does it mean if you're a competitive person because you hate losing? Like if you're like, is it like, because like, do I like winning? Yes, of course. But do I hate being bad at things or losing more? Is that considered play too?
I would imagine, since this is one of the further away parts of my personal play style, I'm not a competitor. I don't care if I lose and I don't care if I win. So I would assume that if I care about not losing, that it's the same as saying I care about winning. Slightly different, but same competitor instinct, I would imagine. Then we get the director, which is actually a really interesting one. It's the person that is like orchestrating things around, right? So like people who like really like to plan trips for their friends. Like I got the cabin in the woods. I brought these things. We're all going here on this day. They're the director. But in our life, right? In our DevRel life, this is the mod, right? The community moderators that we have that aren't hired, that are just like, they do it for the joy that they get from helping direct the community. I've seen a lot of people like this, like going back to like, I moderated a forum for the newspapers I worked at. Like there were people that that's where they find their joy, and not for me either. Yeah, I can totally.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Brian is much better at that, of keeping all of us on track. I will give you 5 new documents, and then in the moment that you closed your tab, I made 5 more.
I probably still have.
Well, I mean, if you look at even all the stuff I do in the like community or otherwise, like this show notwithstanding, I'm usually not the face of anything. I'm out there. I'm doing allowing everybody else to be the face, but I'm kind of doing the organizing.
Those people are godsends, because like, holy cow, all the like little moving parts, I start writing them down and then I get stressed, and then I write another plan for them, and then I'm stressing again.
Yep. And then the last 3, right? So there's the collector. This is where our swag comes in, right? Like the person that goes booth to booth at the conference, like, because they want to get the swag from every single booth. I give a browse and I find the socks because I'm a sock guy, but like they're the ones that like want every little bit, and then they show off their like collection of conference badges and stuff like that, right? They're the collectors. This can be collecting of physical objects, but also of like emotions or experiences or things like that. But they don't do it to experience it. They do it to collect it and to have that memory more than anything else. The artist creator is another archetype. And again, this is the one that is, very relevant to DevRel. They're the people that build to build. They want to be building. They do it in their day job. And that's why like work and play are not at odds. You can be playing to do your job. And the best job for you is the one that feels like play most of the time. And then my personal play archetype is the storyteller. I like telling stories, but also what I do in my spare time is consume stories. I love reading. I love watching movies. I love good TV. And I don't watch them while I do other things. Like I can't sleep. Like my wife will fall asleep on the couch when we're watching something. My son and I will watch his kids' TV show if I'm in the room and I'm engaged. I'm in the story. I'm there for it. I can't fall asleep. I have to move to go do something else if I want to do that.
Oh yeah, no. Joe, my husband, is like that as well. He gets so annoyed because I'll be sitting next to him doing 72 things, and he's like, and I'll be like, what happened in that last scene? Who's that?
Well, and a long time ago, we had this like mini Harry Potter Trivial Pursuit, like forever ago, and we weren't allowed to play it anymore because my wife stood no chance. But it's because I engaged with the stories, right? Like I read them as like a late teenager, early 20 something like that. And I consume stories and I retain them. Like that's how my brain works. And so like tiny details I had and she didn't. And it's the same with a lot of other things. Like that's my play style. So like, what is the story you're telling me? That's why I really engage in tech with presentations that tell me like what this means in the context of everything else. I don't care about the details. I care about the broad story. And I think that there's a decent bit of people out there that do that as well. And I know that we're at time now, basically. So
yeah, we are. But I mean,
you
what about the fermenter?
I did actually find a play one.
What's that?
It's the most important part of the podcast. Duh.
Oh.
The fermentation part. How else will we retain our number one podcast?
Our jokester archetype needs to have her moment.
Yeah, we need to have a moment. We also need to make sure that we are being the number one podcast in developer relations and fermentation. Maintain that for my winner.
Competitor.
Yep. I like how we changed that to a winner. But so this is how I did this. I went to scholar.google.com and I typed in play, pickle, ferment, and then hit go. And it came up with stuff, actually. I was like, oh, cool. This is a study from 2002, I think so. And I like to imagine that they were probably having one too many of the drinks, or 2021, actually. But there is a study that was published in the National Library of Medicine. So pretty great. On the effect of sound, intensity and frequency on yeast growth and the performance of fermentation and the volatile compensation, oh my goodness, these are volatile composition of beer and other fermented substances. So they literally took, from my understanding, like this beer they were fermenting, and they put it in bags, read like the first page of the study, and then I was like, Erin, you have to actually do your day job. And they put it underwater with speakers, and they said, listen to music, I guess. I actually don't know if there was any results. It just said that, it said sound treatment had significant effects on the number of viable yeast cells in suspension at 10 and 24 hertz with a p-value of 0.05, with the control samples having the highest cell samples. So only the abundance of some alcohols showed a response. The TLDR is it impacted fermentation.
They've done studies on plants like that too, where they broadcast sounds, and some sound waves and some decibels like increase or decrease plant growth. Living organisms were sensitive to these things.
Yeah, I was like, and then I thought about that. I thought about the living part of it, and I was like, do I feel bad because there's living organisms in my beer? And then I said no. That's it. So TLDR makes sounds. The studies in the chat, Brad wants to share. Yeah, make sounds, I guess, as you sing your beer, or don't. I don't know what the official.
Or play music
status.
to your beer. So what is that? Is that
If you sing while you're drinking a beer, I think it works. But anywho.
Yeah, I mean, the more beers you drink, the more you sing too, right?
Yeah, just compounds on itself.
Yeah.
And then we have
right.
a very cool blog by Brian. We'll tweet that out. And yeah, until next time.
Which Brian? Which
Me.
Brian
Brian
play Brian.
Robinson, the play Brian, not the dev Brian. We're over dev today.
I was like, wait, I haven't. I mean, I did blog a couple weeks ago, but that's which for me is recent. You know?
Yeah.
I don't blog that often anymore.
Yeah, so
you know that is part of my play, though. I have been setting aside, like trying to say, hey, this Sunday I'm going to sit down. I'm going to write. But I can't do it every time.
But if you go to whenweplay.org, you can go check out all of fun Brian's shenanigans. And yes, please sing it. But unfortunately, I do have to apparently go do my day job.
Boo.
Yeah.
Play more.
Yeah. Boo.
Yeah. Go build your fun little app for determining if you're
for roasting tech people. I gladly will.
Yes.
I'll share it in the
Next
Discord.
time we gotta show it. Yes.
Yeah, I'll send you guys the video of. I'm actually running like stats on it right now. It's very stupid. I love it. So great.
I can't wait to mess with it. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks, Brian, for joining us as well. And we'll be back sometime.
I play nice with Brian's, I think. Maybe.
Yeah. We'll look for details on cfe.dev for when we'll be back. See you all next month. Bye.
Bye.
And Erin she's like, I can't even wait for the stream to end. Bam.
We're still live, I think.
Yeah, I know. I clicked the end stream. This is usually this would be like the awkward, like, okay,